Hello, everyone. Tracy here, your resident business rebel, and you're listening to Digital Business Your Way podcast, the show that lets true stories and insider secrets of online entrepreneur life unfold. Our business world is growing, and as an online business coach and digital product creator, I believe you didn't become an entrepreneur to grin and bear your way through business. So I'll be your guide as we drop in on coaching calls, have intimate sit-downs with online personalities you love, and discuss ideas, opportunities, and strategies circulating our online world. So pop in your earbuds, tap follow, and join me as I demystify this thing called business. Hello, Tracy here. And I've been putting off this recording because the allergies, they're so real. So if I sound funny, sorry, but thankfully, my lovely editor can handle anything, and I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. So last episode, we were talking about margins, right? And not in, one of those spreadsheet charge more kind of ways, but in a very structured way. And the three thresholds, right? The covering creation, which is your gross margin, the paying for itself, which is the operating margin when it starts to actually cover things beyond initiation, and then generating profit, right? Which is the net profit. And we introduced the idea of cost buildups as a way to actually see where an offer sits inside of your business. So today, let's make this very concrete, all right? Because here's where some people can get a bit tripped up. Especially when you're trying to be comfortable, with a lot of like these finance jargon and understanding where what you have going on in your business fits into this exactly. All right. You can hear margins and you can think, oh, so I must price better. But, no, that's never going to be my just one size fits all answer. What you actually need is to stop asking one offer to do everything, right? Just like we can't ask one area of our business to cover and stabilize our entire business, we can't ask a single offer to do all of it, right? It bloats it. It puts too much pressure on the offer and on you by extension. Digital business owners, especially those of us that are coaches and digital product creators, courses, workshops, all the things, we tend to kind of isolate offers, right? We treat them like they're supposed to stand alone. That this one offer that I'm going to bring out, it's going to pay me well. It's going to cover all the expenses in the business. It's going to be accessible for my audience too. And of course, it's going to convert easily and I got to scale it. And it must feel aligned with me. Right? It's that Goldilocks, that all at once, and it's not sustainable. That's fragility, actually, because each offer has a different role, and that's why there's diversification. Okay, because when one offer is asked to carry the emotional, financial, the structural weight of your entire business, it will always feel like it's underperforming, even when it's not. Right? We felt that before when we've been asked to be everything for everybody all at the same time. Nothing ever feels like we're doing it right or good enough. And the offers have that same feeling. There's an assumption baked into our online space that's like, well, if this offer was positioned correctly, if we marketed it more, if we did more blah, 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 it would quote unquote work, right? And that implies that, well, if it's not working, then it must be your messaging, your confidence, your audience, your pricing. Yes, each of those pieces, we look at, but especially for this conversation, the offer, it's just being asked to play the wrong role in your business. And margins tell you which offer fits and what it is best used for, right? So we can set the right expectations, so we can make the plans accordingly. That's the beauty of cost buildups. So that way, when we are changing our prices, it's with full information of what role the offer is and what and how it affects our margins, right? And of course, that rounds us into revenue rhythms, right? And I'll go deeper into those soon, especially if you want me to. As always, give me DMs, give me, replies in the AMA box and tell me which of these parts do you want me to pull in more? Do you need a workshop, a worksheet, anything that will help? Just let me know, all right? Because I really want you to understand all of these concepts so that way you can be a fully informed and just be like a business owner that you feel that relaxing set about things, right? And you know where your decisions are coming for what and when. And that's how we ended up taking this deep dive into this, because this isn't like a one episode on finance and we're done, right? It's a big topic that there's a lot of lack of knowledge around it because we're not taught these things, right? So let's zoom out and let's talk about our offers as a whole, because they don't live in isolation. They are the ecosystem. And we'll, of course, do jargon busting time. And we can start with what it means when I say offer ecosystem. I'm not trying to sound fancy or market another word. It's a real thing. It exists in finance already. But an offer ecosystem, it just means the way your offers interact with each other and inside of your business, right? The beautiful Venn diagrams. And that's it. Because some are built to bring people in, some to deepen relationships, some to stabilize cash flow. Some will generate large bursts of cash and large bursts of profit. Some will just quietly support the rest. And that's the translation of all of the marketing terms that you'll hear, like loss leader and cash cow, and how that some can do more than one of these. Okay. So I'm not saying that you suddenly have to have, an entire handful of offers, or that you can't have more than one of the same type. Okay. It's just understanding which role and roles it is meant for each of the ones that you have. Okay. Because they are not meant to behave the same way, especially when we're going for sustainability. And the moment that we can really feel that, well, that's when that pressure will drop, right? And, for those that have physical product businesses or you've worked inside of them before, this can feel a bit more tangible than it can for us, right? Because you have the cost of goods, the cost that it took to create the physical thing, then the shipping, and then the storage and bulk pricing, margins that are visibly attached to each of the units that are sold, right? But in our digital businesses and service providers, well, these often feel very invisible because we don't see the mental load, which is part of the cost of goods, the delivery bandwidth, well, that's shipping, right? The update cycles and the community management, that's part of storing, right? The ongoing support and the back end systems, okay? All of this, it can feel like once something is created, well then, bam, it's out there and now everything is just money pouring in. But it's not. It's distribution of the cash. And when costs are distributed across time, energy, and infrastructure, well, they're easier to ignore. That out of sight, out of mind type feeling. But until they show up as exhaustion, resentment, right? How often have we felt that? And feeling like we're constantly tweaking something that from an outside perspective, it's structurally fine. Okay. So let's start with coaching offers, for example. So one-on-one or group, whichever, they have that capacity bound by nature. Yeah. Because they require your presence, responsiveness, decision-making, emotional labor, preparation, follow-up, the duty of care, and continuation offers, right? They're not infinitely scalable in a way people sometimes pretend they are in order to sell their coaching programs, just by adding more people, taking you out of it, charging more, right? Those aren't one size fits all in every single business. So when you do a cost buildup on coaching, you're not just looking at how many calls, what's the price of your time, but it's how much capacity does this require per client? What happens when I hit my cap? What does this need to contribute beyond just paying for itself? right? Getting further into each of those thresholds that we talked about last week. And often the beauty of coaching offers is that they will hit the third threshold, right? They will generate profit. But if it's your only profitable offer and it requires your full presence to generate that profit, then you've accidentally built a business that only works when you are on, right? That's why it can feel so draining. It can feel exciting and not at the same time. It's not wrong, but it's something to see clearly, okay? And can be that kind of click that, oh, that's where the exhaustion's lying. Not coaching as a whole, but in it being the only profitable offer you've got. So you have to be on in order to make everything else run, in order to have stuff to come home to, right? So let's say you have a 3-month one-on-one container. Mine are 4 months, but we'll go with the traditional 3. You do your cost buildups. You realize it covers the creation because, it's not about physical creation so much as it is expertise. Yeah. And a lot of us that came from corporate and academia, we've covered that for decades and, paid it out or, still paying it out when it comes to student loans. But that kind of creation in your right now isn't so much, right? Because it's already building off of your past knowledge and your continuation to learn from peers and read books and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. It'll cover delivery because the delivery will be whether you're async or in real time, how you're coming together with your humans and what does that look like and what's going on, right? So it often generates the strongest profit per client once you have the pricing balanced to the results that are being received. Yeah. So we have 1, 2, and 3 of our thresholds. All 3 of our margins are met. But you can often notice that maybe for the season of life you're in right now, you can only comfortably hold 6 clients at a time, or 10, or 3, or whatever your number is for the kind of coaching that you do, right? So the structural question isn't, should I raise the price? It's like, for the love of God, stop raising prices as the answer to everything. But instead, it's, is this meant to be the offer that is the stabilizer of my business? Or is it one component of a broader rhythm? Yeah. Because if it's the stabilizer, you need to protect your capacity fiercely. But if it's just one component, well, then what else exists to share the load, right? That's that ecosystem thinking versus like pricing panic. Okay. So let's now cover courses because this is where things that they can be a bit more interesting, misunderstood because of a lot of the advice, a lot of the loudness in our industry, especially over the last 6 years of what this should look like, how it should be, all that kind of stuff. So courses are often positioned as the scalable, the passive, the freedom-based solution to everything, right? And what do I say around here? Anytime you hear the word the, just remember, oh, that's marketing term, right? Because it's a way. It's a way. It's a way. It's not the way. Because they can be very powerful, right? And this is all digital products. So whether or not you consider yours a course, just insert the term there. But you have to understand how they behave financially and structurally because their margin behavior, well, it's different from coaching. One of the many reasons that I don't even use the word passive, right? You all know that. I only say leveraged. So let's say that you create a course, outline it, record it, edit it, upload it, create the back end to support the students, write the emails, build the sales page, do the marketing campaign for awareness, set up the sales promos, and I'm probably forgetting about 15 other things, right? It's that significant upfront creation cost, time, energy, attention, team support, money, 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 money. So when you do a cost buildup here, the first threshold of, cost of goods, right? Getting to gross profit, it's often substantial because creation, it's not small. Yeah. And that's why people will say that once you've built it, oh, it's 100% profit after that. But it's not. Because what happens after creation is you still have your platform fees, your email software, your payment processor, your customer support, updates to the programs, tech troubleshooting, community moderation, marketing cycles, launch support, because those don't end, right? And your reputation, your business is attached to this asset for a long term because it is a long-term offer, okay? The ongoing costs to sustain it are very real. So digital does not mean costless, it means distributed. So we can look further at that passive versus leveraged, yeah? Because courses, they're not passive, they're front loaded. So you're leveraging upfront costs, upfront time, upfront up, and loaded. So that way it decreased the cost and load later. But the continuation of the cost and the load are then stretched out over a longer period of time, right? Because now the marketing cycle that you do again to make sure that people even know about the offer, the launch support that you do to bring in sales, that's that, rinse and repeat kind of thing, right? Customer service and community support, it gets simpler as you learn the ropes and people learn you, and it goes on and on. Yeah. So it's not all shoved into 3 months of creation. It's now stretched out over years. Okay. The effort is concentrated up front and the return can be stretched over time, right? But the marketing, the visibility, the positioning, the support, the sales sprints, they don't disappear. Even if you choose an evergreen, even if you choose a hyper funnels, everything is still cycling in one form or another to keep the cash coming in. Yeah. So when people say things like, I launched my course and it didn't work, sometimes the undertow of that meaning, like of what didn't work, was that they had expected it to behave like something that brought in a lot of profit per sale. Or they expected it to, stabilize and bring in this consistent amount of money. Especially when people, take things evergreen. They're like, oh my gosh, then things are just going to come in constantly now. But courses often hit margin thresholds in their own way. Yeah. So they can cover the creation after a certain launch. They can cover themselves after a certain volume. And then they can generate profit only once the infrastructure's dialed in. So it's not a bad thing. It's the long game asset, right? It's the over time one versus in the coaching example, how we talk about you have to be present, right? You have to be on for those. So when a course is covering the overhead, it's sharing the cost of running your business with any other offer that you had, right? So the things that aren't tied to a single offer, like your software, like your team support, legal, accounting, like overall brand assets versus offer to offer ones, general admin, your own salary, all of that kind of stuff. Those costs exists, whether you sell one offer, 5, 70, 100, it doesn't matter, right? So when we say an offer is profitable, we don't just mean it covers itself, right? We mean it's contributing to that shared cost that exists no matter what. That's what overhead is. And that it's actually popping into the third threshold. So it's not just giving you bonus money, it's carrying part of the roof. And when someone launches a course, after luck with the initial volume or a couple launches under its belt, that's when it will cover the creation, cover itself, and generate, some percentage of profit, right? But each one of those thresholds, they don't happen simultaneously, and they one can be hit sooner than another, okay? So they're not all in the exact same timeline, all right? Because we want to make sure that we understand that part. So that way we are managing our expectations, right? And not feeling as much disappointment. Because when we expect a course to either perform instantly or quickly, especially some of the testimonials we see, or we want it to carry our entire business and let us back off of other things, it's not necessarily built for that unless we intentionally did, right? To replace your coaching, to stabilize the entire business, to reduce your workload, to increase, freedom, whatever that means for you immediately. Right? That expectation, it's not about numbers, it's about role confusion. So when an offer's role is unclear, even what would be considered a good margin, it feels underwhelming, right? Because when an offer's role is clear, even modest margins, they feel strategic, and you start to see how they're playing in each part, and that they're doing what they should. Yeah. That's that difference. Okay. So imagine a business that has one-on-one coaching, group program, and a course. How many of you are just like that, right? You know, I have them, and hell, you can throw in the word course for workshops and everything else. Each one behaves differently. So one-on-one coaching may hit strong profits per client, but it's capacity limited. A course may require heavy upfront creation, and it can generate slower but steadier profit. And it can be scaled with a volume, right? And there's a lot of like dials to mess with in order to get the right levels that you need. In group programs, they can often sit somewhere in between, because they have that live energy momentum, but there's often something back end that is supporting it, right? So it can generate very solid revenue bursts that then have to last for a while. Yeah. So if you ask each one of these offer types to behave the same way, well, you'll feel that constant tension, right? Whereas if you understand how they distribute the load, then you start designing intentionally, okay? Because every business has shared costs. So the question becomes, which offers are contributing to those shared costs? Some of them only need to cover themselves. That's the break evens. Some offers exist primarily as entry points. Those are called loss leaders, right? They don't care how much upfront money it takes. They're intended for long-term client building. Yeah, and that can be everything from freebies to the stuff we put in ads to. Those are the entry points. And some are profit drivers that cover all expenses and leave some in the bottom line, right? That's the third threshold. So none of those are superior, okay? None of them are superior to the other. It's why diversification is so important. But you need to know and to assign which offer fits into which of the role. Otherwise, everything feels that heaviness and like it's failing. It needs more volume. The price tag needs to change yet again. The funnel, yet again. Launch it on repeat, yet again, because you're trying to get more and more and more and more out of something that's only supposed to perform in a certain area, right? So we let each of them play the role that they are meant for, that they're made for, that they're assigned. So then we can make needed decisions versus, oh my God, the business is ending sort of decisions, right? And it helps with that emotional toll that comes up. Margins help you see all that. And cost buildups have the margins built in, so that way the pricing is right. Yeah. So let's zoom out one more time. Because once you see how coaching and courses behave differently, once you see how margins tell you what role an offer is actually playing, then that's whenever I bring in revenue rhythms. And this one is a term that I made up, but it matches, so much to it, right? So revenue rhythm, it's not just how much comes in, it's when it comes in, how predictable is it, how much energy did it require to bring it in, and how much structure it depends on, right? So it's multi-layered there. And this is where people can often misread their business. It's that hidden piece that they don't really follow and understand, right? It's a concept that I came up with after working with, my corporate consultings. I was also head of finance of a department. And, like looking at how the launches affect versus the stable and really finding the trends and the patterns, which is why I was like, oh, this is like a rhythm. Yeah. So coaching, especially like one-on-one, it can often create concentrated income. Whenever people buy in, whether they pay annually, monthly, whatever, they're tied directly to your presence in some form, and they're tied directly to your availability, right? And presence and availability, it depends on how you've structured it, but nonetheless, the intention is high touch, high return per client, but energy dependent, right? Async live doesn't matter. It's energy dependent. It's real time, and that's relational, right? And when that's clear, then you stop resenting it for not scaling infinitely. But instead you start to protect your containers, right? And your capacity, especially as your season of life fluctuates, right? Whereas courses, creating that leveraged revenue on the back of work and systems. So The work is front loaded, the systems matter, marketing cycles matter, infrastructure matters. And the revenue may stretch further over time if those systems are intact. But leveraged revenue still requires a cycle of visibility, messaging, positioning, refinement on continuous waves, right? It's just behaving differently than the coaching. When people don't understand margins or their rhythm, then the default lever is volume. Sell more, change the price. But volume is not neutral, right? Volume affects the support, the tech strain, the community moderation, refund management, right? Onboarding your attention. And if an offer is sitting at that second threshold where it's paying for itself and giving contribution, but not generating a profit, then increasing volume might move it into profit, but it can also instead just increase strain, right? And then it's a question of, is this strain or is this profit temporary or is it lasting? So without this cost clarity, we don't know which is which. Okay. And that's when we're sitting in the real live movements going, oh, I love this container, but I don't even know if I can keep doing it, or what's going to happen, or I'm going to have to 4x the price. And then will anybody come? But that's the only way I can keep going with it. Okay. Because the real question isn't how do I make this offer perform better? It's what role is this offer playing inside my revenue rhythm? A spike, a stabilizer, a bridge between launches, entry point into deeper work, long game leveraged. There's a lot of different options here. When it's clear, decisions get clear. And you stop having to emotionally react, right? To every single launch result, to every single sale. And again, it's why diversification matters, because it's not add more things, it's design roles intentionally. It's apply them to what goes where, okay? Because you might have a high touch, a leveraged, a mid-tier, not because you should, but because together they distribute the load, the timing, the margin behavior, the energy cost. That's an ecosystem of maturity versus just following someone's advice to always have this ladder or pyramid of offers, right? Because at some point you have to look at your overhead costs, your desired income, your capacity in your life. And instead of feeling the results, we can actually design it into our business. So ask yourself today, does my current ecosystem actually support my desired intentionally, but actually, right? That's that grown-up business style, okay? In the next episode, I'm going to bring in a guest. She's a long-term friend, client of mine who she lives inside the numbers every single day, but she has so much great personality. And I know that, we're going to enjoy ourselves in the conversation. So hopefully you will too, whenever you hear it, because we're going to talk about money without shame, without performance, without any, doom and gloom or boring accounting language. All right. Because understanding this conceptually is one thing, but understanding how it shows up in your actual financials and day to day, that's a whole other layer. All right. So for today, just think about if each of your offers had a clearly defined role, what would change about how you felt when you were selling them? Not what would change about your strategy, but what would change about your nervous system, right? Because when a structure is clear, selling gets quieter, more direct, more effective, less apologetic, less performative. And that's the through line through this entire thing, right? That's why we're doing such a deep dive and letting all these concepts breathe. And I want so much to hear your comments, right? And your questions. And I want to know what you've got going on and what you're thinking, okay? Because human first selling, it's not anti-structure. It's structure that supports the humans. Yeah. So as always, let me know if you have any questions. DM me or tracypatterson.com/AMA. And if you'd like support redesigning your ecosystem, looking into this deeper, I do have a couple one-on-one spots open. And that's at tracypatterson.com/mentorship. And, of course, the link will be in the show notes and you can reach me on Instagram anytime. So until next time, be well and have some fun. Thank you for joining me here on Digital Business Your Way. Be sure to check out the show notes for all the links mentioned today. And while you're there, I'd love for you to rate and review the show. And if you have a topic or question you want me to answer, I want to hear it. Head to tracypatterson.com/AMA and ask me anything about business. If I don't know it, I'll bring it up with one of my guests. And until next week, be well and have some fun.